Close to 12 persons died around me.
Sitting with me is Mr. Neaz Subhan, a popular author, writer, director, actor. Many of you know him from popular TV shows like Guyana Today, which he hosted. And we're talking today not about his experiences and his wide acting range, but we want to sit with him and talk to him about his experience with COVID-19. For those of you who don't know, Mr. Subhan was one of the first cases, well, the early cases of COVID-19 in Guyana. COVID-19 pandemic is real, and many people may feel that it's not as serious as health officials are making it sound. But we want to thank Mr. Subhan first and foremost for taking time off of his busy schedule to sit with us and have a conversation basically about your experience with COVID-19. So first and foremost, thank you for taking the time and sitting here with us.
Well, thank you, Lisa, for having me.
How did you get it, or do you even know? Because of how COVID is passed on, there's sometimes you can't trace where it came from. So my curiosity started there. So do you? Do you know?
I really can't pinpoint a particular place or group of people. I was involved in aspects of the election as a monitor through the ERC. And not to blame anyone, but at that time, I don't think we were focusing on that.
On COVID-19.
So it's difficult for me to do that. I've been trying to, but it's difficult. Yes, I'm still trying to figure out in my own mind where possible it could have been, but so far I haven't been very successful.
So when COVID-19 first hit Guyana, were you taking like all the precautions and stuff like that?
No, not in the sense that you didn't want to, but because at that time when you heard about it, not much was being said in terms of protocols and whatever. I remember the very first day that I wore a mask, might have been around the 16th or so of March, and people were looking at me like if I was crazy. I went into this pharmacy, I went into a supermarket, and I probably was the only one with a mask on, right? And I felt, even my kids, when I got home with a mask on, they were, what is Daddy having on there?
What was your first thought when you heard that you had tested positive for COVID-19?
I was shocked. So when I was told that I was positive, I knew I wasn't doing that well. But like everything else in life, you suspect, but when the reality hits home, it's still hard to accept.
Did you think that it was going to be as bad as it ended up being?
No, never.
You didn't predict it?
No.
How fast did things deteriorate for you in terms of your health?
Fairly rapidly, fairly rapidly. And the amount of things that happened to me, the amount of things that I saw, some close to 12 persons died around me. In the vicinity where I was.
In that moment, did you think that you were going to die too, considering that you were seeing all these deaths?
And I've said in every interview that I would have done, the noise, that familiar noise that became familiar of the trolley coming in to wheel people out. That sound of that trolley. Unfortunately, whenever someone passed, you're thinking, am I going to be next? Would I ever come out of the hospital? I might spend 50 days.
How did your family within that period cope? Were you guys able to communicate and stay in touch?
We were able to communicate, but it was very difficult. I didn't have the strength, both physical and mental strength, to speak to them on video, because I think that would have been more painful, seeing them and not being able to hold them. Eventually, after a couple of weeks, I came around and I did that.
What was it like in the quarantine, other than the seeing all these deaths, but like a typical day?
It's difficult to describe in the short space of time, but I can tell you, while the doctors and the nurses were very, very helpful, they were very conscious about your mental state and all of that. The fact that you were in a room, I would say 6-7 feet by maybe 12 feet, all day, all night, could never be easy. And what happened also is that they would have sealed the room from the inside with plexiglass, right? So even though there was a glass door or glass window you were looking through, from the inside it was sealed, so people couldn't see in. And I recall, Lisa, if you don't mind, there was one day when my mental state was slipping, and I told the doctors, one of the things they told me I could do if I want, I could have my family come and stand on the road, because where I was in the hospital, I could see onto the Lamaha Street. And I said, okay, let's try it. But when they came, they couldn't see me. I'm seeing them. And that was very, very painful.
You were officially cleared. What was your first thought?
I prayed.
Yeah.
You know, I prayed. I took a photograph of the room where I stayed. I still have that with me.
Why? Why?
Because at no time in my life I really thought I would have been in a place like that. And somehow I wanted that memory there to be on film.
I remember seeing you post pictures. I think it may have been a little bit after you got out, but to ask you how you felt when you stepped out, I think for those who are following you on Facebook, they would see, because you could see the joy in your face when you took out those pictures, seeing you greet your family. But I'm still going to ask, in that moment, how did it feel?
It was still a kind of a shock that it was actually coming out. When I came out, the doctors and nurses, some of them, well, quite a few of them, they were actually outside in the compound of the COVID ward. They had placards, balloons, welcomed me out, you're COVID free. They took me to their office, they had a cake, you know, they serenaded me, and they even dropped me home. You know, they even dropped me home. So, because I remember one day a doctor came to me and she told me that there are certain things that they have to do. And I was in so much pain and uncertainty, and she cried. She cried. She said, Mrs. Subhan, it is painful for us to come to tell you every time that you're positive.
You know, there are many persons who don't believe that COVID-19 is real. There are many who don't even think that it's as serious as health officials may put it. What would you say to those persons, considering you've been there?
What I would really want to say, I can't say on television, but the thing is...
Censor it.
with all the respect to people, I think if they just were to look, just look around. Look at the numbers in Guyana, look at the numbers across the world. I don't want to pinpoint any particular country, but there are countries that are far worse than others. And if you just look around, look in your neighborhood, and if someone were to unfortunately die from it, just let that be a lesson to you. And you know, here in Guyana, literally, we're at a point where you're begging people to take the vaccines. And there are some countries that people are craving for that vaccine. So I'm saying is that despite all misinformation, all the myths and everything else, at the end of the day, we have an individual responsibility to be responsible. If not for yourself, for your family. If you love your family, if you love yourself, you will take the precautions, you will take the vaccine. As you started the program by saying, COVID is real.
It is.
I am testimony to that. It is real. And I'm not the only one, there are many others.
So, that's it from our sit down with Mr. Subhan. Once again, we want to thank him for taking the time off of his busy schedule to talk with us about his experience. We just want to encourage you guys out there, take your vaccine, take all the necessary precautions. And for those of you who have been vaxxed, just remember that you still have to wear your mask. You still need to sanitize and keep the social distancing, because while there may be some people who are saying that, oh, you don't have to wear your mask after you've been vaccinated, it's important to keep in mind that this pandemic, it's new. They're discovering new things about it every day. So the more precaution we take, like Mrs. Subhan said, if you care about your family, the more precaution you take, the better for you. So we're out, guys. Thank you for watching.